So, hello and welcome to this webinar from Net Support. And today we're covering a topic which is hugely important for everybody in education, I think. Something that I'm massively passionate about myself. And it's about making sure that every learner has access to the curriculum. Sometimes we think about that around SEND, but actually, while some tools and EdTech, are essential for some and useful for all, actually, when we consider, how we deliver our lessons, how we work with young people, how we support them with their learning, it's important that we consider that right across the piece. I am, of course, talking today about universal design for learning, something which we should all really know about, but unfortunately not everyone does. So we thought it'd be brilliant to bring on two people who really know what it is to come and share about universal design for learning to help you. If you're thinking about it or don't know anything about it or keen to learn more about how to implement it, we've got two brilliant guests to come on and share about that with us today. The first person I'd like to introduce onto the webinar is Claire Evans. She's the principal at St Teresa's Nursery School. She's currently completing a qualification in Universal Design for Learning and has got vast experience in early years inclusive education, digital literacy, accessible learning environments, and you name it. I don't want to sort of steal her thunder in sharing everything about her myself, though. So welcome to the webinar, Claire. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much for taking the time to join us. I'm really excited to hear about your insights on how you're making UDL work for yourselves at the nursery there. The second guest that we have joining us today is someone who has a broad experience in education. She's the Director of Education at Woodland Academy Trust. She is, like me, a founding fellow at the Chartered College of Teaching, and she's got a huge passion for universal design for learning, inclusion, accessibility, SEND, professional development, curriculum design. I could go on and talk about this person for a long time, but I'll let her share a bit more about herself. She is, like many educators, someone who suffers from imposter syndrome, but believe me, she does know what she's talking about. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome our second guest onto the webinar, Julie Carson. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Claire. Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite. I'm really looking forward to talking today.
Great stuff. Thank you so much, Julie. Listen, I've introduced you both a little bit, but could you, I'll start with you, Claire. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work and what drew you to Universal Design for Learning?
Sure. Well, I currently am a principal, as you said, in West Belfast, although you do detect a Scottish accent, but I've lived there for 30 years. And that's my career is spanning 30 years, but there's always been a strong focus on early years and special education needs. I've worked, I'm 11 years as principal, but I've worked prior to that in the Department of Education and the Education Authority. But throughout it all, I've had a real passion to ensure that all children really meet their full potential. I'm currently undertaking, as you said, a UDL qualification through Landtech Digital, which has been transformational in my practice. Although I have looked at UDL for the last couple of years, actually gone through the process of the research and doing evidence-based practice and collecting data, I have really been able to see the impact on children, both in their engagement, their communication, their regulation. It has just been fantastic. So,
Superb. And regulation is important, right?
oh,
I've taught myself for many years, and you know those children who can and those who can't, right? And the obviously impacts on their actual, outcomes and things as well. So I'm really excited to learn more from you during the course of the next little while on the webinar. Julie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you to UDL? I mean, you've got a really great context at Woodland as well, haven't you?
Yes, so I'm DOE across 5 primary schools in southeast London, as lots of schools are higher than national PPG, higher than national SEND, EAL mobility as well. Part of my work that you've described so eloquently also includes the EdTech approach, which is where our UDL and our AI role comes in. We've been developing this for about 4 years now. And it's really interesting, Claire, you were talking about impact, because our outcomes for children with SEND and PPG significantly close the gap, and the gap is better than national as a trust across all of our schools. Reduction in suspensions, improved attendance, all of that because we're enabling our children. I think what really drew me to Universal Design for Learning is its powerful emphasis on removing barriers and then building in flexibility from the start. So it's not an add-on or a different accommodation, but it's that core design principle. And it really aligns with my belief that every child deserves access to meaningful learning opportunities. And we've got to build in those systems proactively so that we can anticipate diversity rather than thinking about it afterwards when it's a bit too late for those children.
I think that was a transformation for me, Julie, too, just that change in mindset, that it's not about differentiation. It is really just about ensuring that all of those tools are available like a buffet, in the class, and that the mindset of the teachers changes, but we'll talk about that as we go along.
Now, it's brilliant you mentioned that sort of difference, because a lot of people can think it's differentiation, can't they, Claire? And sort of shifting that mindset is really important. But again, we'll dive into that a little bit more in just a few moments. I wanted to start with the first question for yourself, Julie, if that's okay. Because as I mentioned in the intro, UDL isn't as widely known about or understood even as it should be. So could you start us off by explaining what UDL, Universal Design for Learning, actually is, and walk us through its three sort of core principles of engagement, representation, and action and expression?
Absolutely. So it's an educational framework, and what it does is it helps us design learning experiences to be accessible and effective for everyone, not just those with SEND. And that's a really common misconception when people talk about UDL, that it's only for children who have, difficulties accessing. It's for everyone. And it's about designing that right from the outset. And what's interesting is it's grounded in neuroscience, and it recognises that learners vary in how they engage with content, how they understand it, and then how they demonstrate their learning. And as I've mentioned, it removes those barriers to learning, and it fosters a sense of agency for each learner. And that's what's key. They're being able to take control of their learning themselves.
Yeah.
And we've got the three core principles. So we've got the multiple means of engagement, which is about the why of learning. So thinking about what motivates those children. So whether they're collaborating, working on their own, using different tools, and having really clear, purposeful goals. We've got the multiple means of representation, which is that what of learning. So that's thinking about how learners perceive and understand information. So, for example, offering content in multiple formats. And I've got a bit of an example in a minute, if that's okay. And then multiple means of action and expression, which is about the how of learning. So that's enabling pupils to demonstrate their understanding in varied ways. So an example of that might be a Key Stage 2 science lesson on the water cycle. So rather than thinking about different resources for different children, you might do in your introduction a short explainer video, which has also got subtitles or a voiceover for it, or translation. A child can translate it themselves into different languages if needed. It might be if they're capturing their learning, they've got a labeled diagram that they can annotate, or a hands-on activity where they're creating a mini water cycle model, and they might narrate over that and create a video. They might display it in a PowerPoint with visuals and keywords. Again, that's down for them to decide. They need to decide how they're going to present their learning.
Brilliant. Listen, that really explains it really clearly to me. But as I was hearing you there, right, and talking about sort of different styles and things that children might be sort of ingrained in, it reminds me of the conversations around learning styles, right?
Yes.
And something that I hear an awful lot of people say is, but isn't UDL just about learning styles? And while learning styles has been debunked, so why should we believe, anything around UDL? Either yourself, Julie, or if you want to sort of jump in on it, Claire. Yeah, what do you say to people who say, well, isn't this just learning styles?
I think it's so much more than that. Obviously, we do all have our own style of learning, but I think it goes deeper. And as Julie said, it's about that neurological, basis of the evidence. I would work in our school. We're a mainstream school, but we do have specialist setting for children with SEN. And yes, it does work so well with those children with needs, but being able to get the buy-in from the mainstream class and the mainstream teachers and getting them to have that mindset change is huge. It's not about, kinesthetic learners or, whatever, but we all have a way of learning. Some of us like to read things, some of them like to hear things. Like I listen to podcasts in my drive to work every day. Everybody's got a different way that connects with them. And one of the things I had to do as a staff was, I send out a weekly staff briefing, and then I would be asking the same people all the time, did you not read it? And they go, not really. Could you do it in a voice note? And since I've done that, it's been huge. So their mindset has changed. They understand how they learn and access learning so that they then have a better understanding of the children in the class. So as Julie said, it's like, having those little videos, having, your visuals, your sound buttons, whatever it is to enable and meet that person at their point of need, whether that be a teacher or a pupil, I've found in my experience as well. So that whole universal approach is so, so engaging.
And I think you've also got to think about what is it, if you're in the classroom that you're wanting to assess. So if you think about, we've got so many of our children who really struggle, especially children who are coming in, who are EAL. We've got a great example of a child in one of our classes who's come from China, and actually they could not access the curriculum. But because of our use of universal design for learning, they have been able to put settings in themselves to support with that translation. They will voice note, and the iPad will translate that back to us. So, and actually they are exceptional at maths. But if we didn't have this way of lesson design, we wouldn't know that. And if we hadn't given this pupil agency, we wouldn't know that. So it's about making sure that we're also assessing the right things at the right point, which UDL helps with when we're designing lessons.
Totally agree with that. And I think as well, for many children post-COVID have come into school pre-verbal. So having no language, or no ability to communicate that. So that has been a real problem of practice within our community. And UDL has really been able to embrace those children. As you say, Julie, take a child who is so passive and shut off to learning. And once you give them that opportunity to access learning, you can really see their full potential. And I'm thinking of one little boy in particular, pre-verbal, ASD, very, very passive in a little bubble. But by giving him the opportunity he loved number. And we wouldn't have known that until we were actually using some of the digital skills with him. And he's just blossomed, and it's just that it's getting that little hook, isn't it? Like, so UDL is a massive big net, that it captures in not just one person, but the whole class to really engage them.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you too, Julie. What I'm really loving are the little nuggets of insights of impact with individuals. So please do keep bringing those through. But it leads me on nicely to my next question for yourself, Claire, about, from a school leader in early years, what does universal design for learning look like day to day in a classroom setting for you?
Well, I mentioned in the beginning just that it's transformative. So if I was walking you through our school, some of the differences that you would see would be just that flexibility in seating, the range of different accommodations that we would have, which allow the children to feel more comfortable, and they will seek them out and they will find the one that works for them, whether it's a peanut ball or whatever, to access the learning. There's various materials. We would have a range of the colourful books, interactive whiteboards, tablets. So you're catering to all those different learning styles and needs. We've got a range of educational apps which engage children in that playful learning, but we make sure that the activities are accessible to all. So it's nearly like doing a risk assessment. You're looking to see, this is what I'm hoping to do. Are all children going to be able to do it? And if not, what are the barriers and how can we put in place strategies? So that's part of the success of UDL for us in the school is our planning. our collective planning as a staff, both in
Mm.
sharing ideas, which we collect on a wakelet, so we're not having to reinvent the wheel all the time, but we're building up that very rich bank of resources that people can
Yeah.
add into, and particularly as new staff join us, to see different ways of actually engaging the children. But really, I think it's allowing those children to express themselves in whatever way they can, whether they
Mm.
are pre-verbal or verbal or EAL or whatever, that they have a means of both engaging and expressing their learning. And for us, that's where we have seen the use. It's funny that you said about the use of AI as well, and it has really influenced. We use Microsoft Copilot. We have a graph within that which keeps everything within our OneDrive and protected, which is fantastic. But we are able to really personalise both children's personal learning plans, but also their individual, planning. So using AI to say, if they are not able to do whatever we're hoping to do, even with UDL, how can I
Mm.
tweak that further? So one of the things we had was I, usually it's problems of practice, right? So the pops that we need to pop in the class, and teachers were saying we're for school, and the teachers were saying, God, the kids are taking too long to get ready. And I'm saying, yeah, it's just a really good pop. What are you talking about, Claire? Pop? What is a pop? And I said, no, it's a problem of practice. I said, so the kids are taking too long to get ready. How, how can we improve that? What's our goal? Well, the goal is to improve their self-help and independence. And what are the barriers to that, whether that be, physical or cognitive, or their mummies have just done it for them, or daddy's gone out in the mornings, it's too, easy to do. And we went through all of those. We looked at our existing strategies, and then we looked to see how we could embrace the UDL approach. So that would include wee videos of Montessori coat flip, maybe the visuals, but we share these all with the parents. But one of the things of that real time collaboration with parents through Seesaw and adopting this UDL approach, one of the parents came back and said her daughter had Erb's palsy, which I'd never heard of, and it wasn't in her notes either. She had a palsy at birth, and she said she'll find that really difficult to do the coat flip. So back to Copilot AI. Child has Erb's palsy, looking to do Montessori coat flip. How do we do it? Put it on the table. How simple. But we're in that real time. We were able to address the personal needs of that particular child. The
Mm.
parents got it. And within 2 weeks, all our kids had the coats on and off, no problem. But in UDL step fashion, we got them all little tags to help them pull it up. But, it's, as I've said, it's a mind shift. It's a whole transformation, but it's not anything that's too arduous. It's just about reframing what you're already doing. And not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but getting in these additional things to support your learning.
Thank you, Claire. There's so many things to unpick there. And what I really love, I mean, you're talking about planning and all the rest of it, but at the heart of everything is really knowing the children, which should be, the cornerstone of every sort of teacher's practice, shouldn't it? And if you know your children, then you're able to do the planning effectively, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's lovely the little examples you shared, things like using Copilot to help you to sort of learn some things yourself quickly, a little reckoning to go back to, and I love the parental engagement as well, because we know that the research shows that triumvirate of support from school, home, and child has that big impact as well. Loads of lovely little takeaways from there, Claire. Thank you so much. We mentioned at the top of the conversation about differentiation and how UDL is sometimes misunderstood as being like another form of a differentiation or adaptive learning. Or even just more work, because you're thinking, oh, crikey, here's another thing we need to think about UDL. Julie, why is that a misconception, and how can schools reframe their thinking around this? Because it isn't that, is it?
No, it isn't. And I think that can actually lead to resistance because teachers think, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to create all of these instead of just 3 resources, for example. If you think about the old red chili, yellow chili, etc., I'm going to have to create lots and lots of different resources. But it's not about that. And I really liked the way that you framed that, Claire, around it, thinking about what barriers to learning are there, and then how can we put things in place to stop that. So if I give an example of persuasive writing and the way that we've approached persuasive writing in one of our Year 4 classes. So originally, they might have done a scaffold sheet with sentence starters for some children, which are prepared for them. Another group might have key vocabulary supporting them, but nobody else can access that. An open-ended task with, one model text, but nothing else. And if you can't access that, you can't access that. So how we've done it instead is, for the multiple means of engagement, we've provided, yes, we're doing persuasive writing, but you've got an option of 3 different ones. There's no kind of preparation needed for that. So it might be, should school be open all year round? Should we ban plastic lunch boxes? And should children vote in school decisions? So then the children can pick one that actually means that it means something to them. So not just a random one that the teacher thinks, oh, everybody will be interested in this. So I'm going to write a meaningful thing around banning plastic lunch boxes, and these are my reasons why. So that links to the purposeful goals. For the multiple means of representation, then instead of preparing lots of different resources, I'm just going to provide a short video, which has got captions on of persuasive language techniques. I might read a model text aloud, or the children might have a model text which they can read aloud, or they can use kind of the reading program on the iPad to do that for them. And then I'll have the vocabulary for everyone. And we share that on the iPad. So it's not just, individual children who have it, it's useful for everybody. And then what we've done, instead of everybody having to write it, and again, it goes back to that, what are we assessing? Are we assessing their ability to actually physically hold a pen, or are we assessing their ability to write a persuasive text? So it might be some children choose to write it as a traditional persuasive text, but it might be actually I'm going to record a podcast. And the children have all been trained to do this using the iPads, but this is the way that I'm going to present it because I know I'm going to do this more. It might be that I'm going to present it as though I'm speaking to Parliament. So I'm going to video myself giving a speech because I'm an MP talking about it. And there's no resources needed for that. I don't need to create a bank of anything. I have literally created the sentence stems or persuasive language for everyone, and then it's for the children to make those decisions. Yes, you might put caveats within that to make sure you haven't got something going completely rogue and off. But, then I'm actually understanding what is it that children know about persuasive writing, not what is it that they're just able to put on a piece of paper for me. And I think because we've done so much work on it, staff, because that was my worry right at the beginning, or are we asking them to create more? But staff are really clear that they really like this because it reduces their workload. So they can see the impact in the classroom, absolutely, and the impact on outcomes for children and engagement and behaviour. They're actually able to teach now rather than, having to deal with children who can't access, so are then acting out. And they talk really clearly about the fact that they're not spending lots of time creating a whole load of different resources. Their time is spent thinking about the needs of the children and how to design that lesson, which is the right time to be spent.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's so many things you've shared there, and what makes it lovely, I think, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Claire, but you made it seem really, really doable because it isn't about having to make an individual resource for everybody. It's just about how you approach it, and that comes down to those design principles, doesn't it? For taking that time, and again, linking to what you've shown before, Claire, about planning. Knowing the children so that you can create those opportunities so they're able to access things. I wanted to sort of tie in quite nicely with that, Claire. Have you got any sort of more, because you've shared a few there, Julie, thank you, practical ways that teachers can incorporate these UDL principles into their teaching without it feeling overwhelming? Because, like I say, you talked, didn't you, about it potentially being a barrier and all these things, but it seems like you've got it licked. And we might come back to how you've from your starting point to where you are now with it, and some more on that journey. But Claire, any sort of further practical ways that we can incorporate these principles?
I think the buy-in from teachers is crucial. As I talked about earlier, just those problems of practice. It's the things that do your head in. That's how you get them on board. As Julie said, if you have, everything working, it's a much nicer place to work in. If children are engaged and enthused in their learning, the job is joyful. So if we can have that discussion with the staff to say, like, what are the things that you're repeating day on day out? What are the things that are doing your head on, as we would say in Northern Ireland? And they are the buy-ins. And I actually just put up on the wall a big A3 bit of paper just with some circles. And I'm saying, add your pops. And they are then brought to the staff meeting and will say, these are the things that are doing our head in. And because they can see the real time improvement in the children, they're enthused. Like on our WhatsApp, they're getting stuff from online. Wouldn't this be really good to do? That enthused, motivated behaviour has been missing. We've had action short strikes the past 7 years in Northern Ireland because of the conditions and pay. A lot of our teachers have never worked in any other environment, which is just basically, work to rule. But it's so hopeful for me as an experienced and getting to the retirement stage too teacher is to see young teachers motivated and having that passion to meet children at their point of learning. So I think when they can have that personal buy-in, that they can address issues that they are having themselves, and being able to see real-time changes in the children with very, very little, as Julie has said, it's about reframing how you do things and, letting the children nearly take ownership, even in early years. And I think that approach where they are choosing how they do something is empowering, and it also is engaging for them, because there's nothing more personal if they're choosing to do something in school. And all we can do is support it by either scaffolding or giving them the added digital supports that will enable them to succeed.
And I think when you speak to the children about their learning as well, that's when it comes through really strongly about the difference it's making to them, and especially those children kind of in year 6 who've been with us during the journey for the 4 years, and they can talk really eloquently about the difference this approach has made to their time at school and their enjoyment of school and their learning aspect as well.
It's interesting, Julie, because so many of our children are pre-verbal. And that was an issue that we had to address. How can we ascertain whether the children are happy and engaged in school? How do we know? So that was a problem of practice in itself, but being able to have just those very, very simple visuals or toys, objects of reference for the children who needed it at that level. But the mindset was, how do we get the temperature of the children? How do we know that what we are doing is working for them? So by investing that time, that has become embedded across the whole school. So whether they're outside and for school, inside, engaging in whatever type of learning, children have got a means both to demonstrate their enjoyment of the lesson, but also to demonstrate to the teachers because they're showing us, and they'll kind of like mark it out, whatever, they'll tell you, we could improve this or could we do this, and that's fantastic because I feel UDL, that mindset shame is about empowering teachers to speak up, but also the children, as you say as well, in whatever way they can.
What I'm loving about this from both of you is not only, and it is joyous, as you said, Claire, when you sort of see this from the children, but what I'm loving as well is about how enthusiastic colleagues are about all of this as well. I mean, it's such a lovely thing. Linking into that, Julie, about enthusiasm from staff. Firstly, are you seeing that from colleagues in the various schools across the Woodland Trust? And linking into that, which is going to that sort of strategic sort of support, and professional learning is obviously really important. So people know how to do these different things and what have you. So, what is the enthusiasm levels like from colleagues. And what does effective professional development, professional learning around UDL look like? How can we ensure that staff feel confident rather than maybe overloaded? Like I say, that could be a barrier, can't it?
Yeah, I think, come to any of our schools and speak to any of our staff. Our staff are really passionate about the approach because they see the difference that it makes, and it has been a journey over the 4 years to get to that point. At the beginning, they weren't that passionate. They weren't that passionate. It's kind of me going, hey, look at this. This could be the potential impact. But I think that's linked into our approaches. So, it's not just a one-off inset. And I think that's where things can go wrong as well. Here's a shiny new thing. I mean, it happens so often in education, doesn't it? It's the next thing. Look, we're going to introduce UDL. Here's a day all about it. But it's then the so what? What are you going to do with that? So we've really carefully planned out. We have, a digital inset day at the beginning of every year, whether that's a focus on UDL, AI, combination of UDL and AI. We have done lots of modelling through curriculum planning. So because we're 5 schools, I'm in the privileged position that we've got an assistant head who develops our digital approach in the classroom. So he works across all 5 schools. So he does, individual coaching. We've got Apple coaches in each school as well who support with our UDL approach. They'll do co-planning, they'll do team teaching, they'll do modelling. We also have, lots of every half term at least, we do UDL training. It might be short snapshots of things. It might be bring us a problem and we'll unpick what that actually looks like and how can we support you with that? What are the barriers that you're facing with this? We've done lots of celebration. So especially kind of at the early stages of, look, somebody's created this UDL lesson, listen to them talk about their impact. And we did staff spotlights on some of our trainings where we had staff talking to the rest of the staff team about how they had introduced things, what the impact had been, both on the children and on them, as well as professionals. We do lots of kind of documentation sharing. We do co-planning. So it's kind of, we've embedded it into everything. We've also put kind of digital approach into job descriptions. So if somebody new is coming into the trust, they know what's expected. We have training for new staff, especially around ECTs in our induction package, because what we found was, great, we've got a new member of staff starting, but if they knew nothing about UDL, they were expected to catch up really quickly. So we'll focus particularly on those groups. And before we changed our performance management, so when it was kind of like the old style with targets, we had linked UDL to that as well, because that's what we found. We then had that joint approach across everywhere. So we've put a lot of work into thinking about, actually, we've got our kind of generic approach across trust, but then we've got our bespoke approach within each school and within each year group, and sometimes within teachers as well, just to support that development.
That's amazing, Julie. And I'm listening, and it reminds me if I think about the Education Endowment Foundation report on implementation and how to successfully, are you informed by that sort of thing? Is that what sort of led to the ways in which you develop these communities of practice and focusing on those really important mechanisms? Is that something you sort of consider?
Yeah, so everything we do is based in kind of research to make sure that, we're not just being rogue. But I think it's also experience of change management previously. Before I started this role, I was a head for, I'm trying to think now, about 13 years, I think. And as a head, you do lots of school improvement work, lots of change management, but we pull out the most relevant aspects of research for us. But it's also about the pilots and the trying it. So actually, we're going to pilot it with these teachers first, just to see, is there leg room in this? And when we did that, we didn't choose the people who were great at digital because, I wanted it to be members of staff who really didn't understand the approach. Because actually, if we can get them on board and them saying, wow, this is amazing for us, it's been transformational, then people are more likely to listen than somebody who's kind of seen as a whizzy tech person. And I think that has been particularly successful with some of our support staff as well. We've got one member of staff who was so anti-UDL, digital approach. And actually, she now trains support staff coming in on the approach because she has really benefited from the support, but can really see the impact it's had with the groups of children that she works with. And that itself is, a significant achievement for her. And I love to talk about her because I just think, she needs celebrating, actually, because it would have been really easy to just go, no, not doing it, not doing it. But she gave it a go and took risks. And I think that's the other
Yeah.
thing. When you're introducing something, it's allowing, in inverted commas, staff to take risks and to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And to share those mistakes and learn from those mistakes without it kind of being as though they're going to get in trouble for something if something goes wrong. It's like, actually, we don't want people to fear this. We want people to have a go.
Yeah, trust in professional agency is so
Absolutely.
important. I'm so many great things you're sharing there, Julie. I'm just wondering, Claire, how does that sort of reflect back to how you've embedded UDL and trained and supported staff at St. Teresa's? Is there any parity?
Yeah, there is actually. I would chair our area learning community. So there's 26 nurseries locally. We would be very data driven, and evidence based practice would be to the fore. So post COVID, we would have done a lot of work to see of that school readiness for children coming in, that the skills that they just were not having, and what were the reasons for that, and how could we address it. And UDL has been, a fantastic vehicle to address that, those issues. So we looked at engagement, communication, and regulation, because we literally came together as a whole community and listed up all the problems of practice, that were there. But when we drilled down, those were the three areas that we said, these are the three areas that we need to really target. And I piloted with about 11 schools originally, just a kind of tracker. So initially we had for engagement 1 to 5, and I had really drilled down what all that meant, and then they came back to me very quickly and said, I think we've got dyscalculia because we can't work all these numbers clear, it's too difficult. So we changed to a RAG system of red, amber and green, which has been adopted very quickly. But the beauty of those detailed observations based on the additional tweaks and micro, changes have shown the impact on those children. It's huge, and it's not just in my school, but it's replicated in other schools as well. So I have ongoing work with Queen's University, so I have very rudimentary coding skills, but I coded an app to a very, very, very basic level, handed it over to the contact in Queen's and said, look, I want to be able to show the impact on engagement, communication and regulation, but I want it at pupil, class, school and area-wide basis, so that we can see that the impact that UDL is having on these children and addressing the problems of practice that we have as a community. So that has been positive, and it's nearly at the end stage now. Can't wait to get it going. Also, I was fortunate. We have a shared education partner in Northern Ireland, so we got a bit of funding, and we decided.
Happy days.
Yeah, it's great. It doesn't happen very often, but two of the people who were on the Landtech UDL course with me work in W5, which is a science discovery place in Belfast. And I thought, right, how wonderful would this be to upskill both schools in UDL and digital skills, coming together. So we were able to bring in different trainers. I devised an 8-week program. So we're actually going to this centre, and the children were engaged in digital technology, but it was allowing the staff to develop and get their confidence in doing it. So we would have had an immersive classroom where they were engaged in all different activities. They were able to work, just in small groups with people, but the whole focus was on the child and their learning. So we had to kind of you colour group them, from both schools to areas that they may be interested in, and they have just exceeded our expectations in that they having their engagement, their communication and regulation, because we're allowing them to have those AACs, the augmentative alternative communication things in situ, that they have a range of ways that they can make little movies, or they can just do the traditional, colouring books or whatever. But that has really opened the eyes of the parents who are attending on those trips and staff, and the shared education part has happened naturally because we're all engaged in what we're doing and everybody's having good fun, and there's a joy to the sessions. So yeah, it's similar but slightly different because it's just on a very small scale where we are. But
Yeah. It's great to see you sort of working innovatively, and that's something that obviously I know from my work with yourself as well, Julie. Seeking out external partnerships to help you achieve, goals can be really, really useful. We're almost out of time, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump straight into some sort of quick fire sort of questions for both of you. And so I'll jump straight to you first, Julie, but this is a question for both of you. Could you share quickly sort of one common barrier you see that stops schools from embedding UDL effectively, and how can you avoid that?
Yes, so there's lots of misconceptions actually about what external people think. So we don't do this for Ofsted, we do it for our children. However, there's those misconceptions out there around Ofsted want to see. Ofsted want to see working books, they want to see X, Y, and Z. So for us, it was myth busting with that. Actually, it's not about Ofsted, it's about what's right for us, and we justify that to Ofsted. Saying that, one of our schools had Ofsted, and they looked at our approach really in fine detail, and they really celebrated it in the Ofsted report. So actually, it's just collect those myths in and debunk them all.
Brilliant, thank you. And myths, I think was the word you said then, yeah? Yeah,
Myths.
brilliant stuff. Thank you very much, Julie. How about yourself, Claire? What one
I think
sort of common barrier?
Time. Time is always precious, but I think when you get that buy-in, as we've talked about earlier, the time invested in reframing what we're already doing, it's repackaging almost, but with little shiny bits added on, which should really engage everybody. The time taken to train, to explain, to put in place the supports that are needed, to really, really drill down and say, what are the goals, what are the barriers, what are the strategies, what else can we do? And then to measure that impact is so rewarding. And it's rewarding not just for me as a principal, but for the staff and the pupils as well.
Great stuff. Thank you very much indeed, Claire. Hopefully, viewers, you are thinking, well, do you know what? We should be looking at this UDL. It sounds all right, actually. If you looking to get started, Julie, is there any sort of research findings, tools, or resources you'd recommend for those wanting to deepen their understanding of UDL beyond what we've been discussing today?
Yeah, so there's two aspects. So you've got London Grid for Learning. They've got a UDL portal, which has got some videos in, lots of information. That's really helpful to have a look at. But you've also got the CAST website, cast.org, which is kind of the birthplace of UDL. They've got guidelines which are really clear and research informed, lots of examples in there. And, have a look at their LinkedIn profiles as well. And you've got someone called Beth Stark, who has developed Ludia, which is an AI tool which supports with UDL planning. So even if you've not got digital tools, it will support you just in the classroom with that. So I'd have a look at those.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Julie. And hopefully, Claire, Julie's left you some things to share on that one. Some of those are quite low-hanging fruit there, Julie. So I think you've done quite well.
I totally agree with everything, and I have to say, Lydia is a recent thing for me, which is fantastic. Also, the use of agents and Copilot. So I have a UDL agent, which supports me in any of the work that I'm doing. But there's also a book, The Universal Design for Learning Theory and Practice, that I found very useful, was Maya, Rose and Gordon. And it gives a very comprehensive overview. So just if someone wants to see a different way of learning, if it's online or if it's reading a book, in true UDL fashion. But there's lots of online courses and webinars available from Universal Design for Learning, Implementation and Research Network, and they can provide a lot of training as well. But it's out there. It's just a case of making it work for you. But certainly Lydia, I think, is a good starting point. Absolutely.
Great stuff. Thank you, Claire. And I'll come back to you, Claire, seeing as I've been sort of putting you second. Let's put you front and centre with this one, so you can get the first sort of dibs on the response to this particular question. If you can share one sort of final piece of advice that you haven't shared yet already, that you think everyone should be aware of when it comes to this topic, what would it be?
I think it's just to bear in mind that UDL is a journey. It's not a destination, and it doesn't matter how quick or slow you go on it. I think just to keep on that road is so important for our children. We're constantly changing. We're constantly changing because our children are changing. The pupils that we have in front of us are changing through a variety of factors. And having that tool to be flexible and responsive is so, so important. I've also found that collaboration, and I've spoken a little bit about really engaging with the parents and the staff, has been a game changer. Having that triangulated approach, I think has really made great inroads to impact. And then just having that openness to stay informed, open to new developments and research, and allowing that to shape how we're doing. So it's by no means a destination. It's definitely a journey, but I'm happy to be on it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claire. And then over to yourself, Julie.
I think building on that, my final piece of advice would be UDL is a culture. It's not a checklist. So it's not about ticking off strategies, I've done this, and I've done this, and I've done this. It's about really shifting how you think about teaching and learning, and really truly believing that variability is the norm and not the exception. And I think once you kind of understand that it's that shifting culture, then that really helps link to that journey that Claire's talked about as well.
Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, thank you both so much for taking the time to share all of these golden nuggets of brilliant advice and practical examples, ideas for implementation, all sorts. I hope you've enjoyed it too as guests. If you want to find Julie and Claire, you can do so. I'll stick with just LinkedIn for now. You can find Claire as Claire Evans. We'll put details for connecting into the show notes and things as well. So Claire's on LinkedIn. Just look for Claire Evans and I think Principal, because there's probably a few Claire Evanses out there. But Claire Evans and Principal, that should bring her up on LinkedIn, and I'm sure she'd be keen to. She shares lots of great things, as does Julie. And Julie can be found on LinkedIn as well. Just simply search for Julie Carson, Woodland Academy Trust. And yeah, brilliant stuff. Listen, thank you both again so much for joining me for this session on Universal Design for Learning. It is massively important, I feel. I really echo so many of the sentiments and things that you've shared throughout the webinar today. Thank you to you for joining us for this. We've got more webinars coming up soon, so please do subscribe for updates and all those different things via netsupportsoftware.com. Upcoming webinars include topics such as digital citizenship, digital literacy, and bring your own device. So if you're looking for some ideas about how to successfully embed BYOD within your school, trust, or other setting, then please do join us for that. But for now, thanks again to you, Claire, and to you, Julie, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thanks.